particular case, we are going to discuss about the rights of maternity and the recognition of the right of maternity of employees of the state government. In this particular case, the appellant Uma Devi had been married and through that marriage had two children. Now, these two children were born between the years of 2007 and 2011. Uma Devi then got employed into a school as a government employee in 2012. That is after her two children were born. Now, at this particular time, it is important also to note that her marriage dissolved while she was working, and during this timeline, we see that in 2017, she remarries, and after she remarries, we see that she's expecting a child. Now, another important point to note is that her children from the first marriage were with the first husband, so were in the custody of the first husband. And in the second marriage, she was expecting now her first child and therefore applied for maternity leave. Now, her application is rejected by the state government, and they cite the fundamental rule 101A, saying that when there are two children surviving, then in that situation, the employee is not entitled to maternity leave. In simple terms, if the employee has two children, she will not get leave for the third child. Now, this led to the question as to are maternity rights or maternity leave inherent to one's right of choice of reproduction, and therefore it led to this whole discussion on can the state go ahead and make such kind of rules. The arguments that were also put forward in this particular case was that with regards to the policy of population control, maybe the government in that context wanted to put forth the restriction or the policy. Now, the Supreme Court at this time also made reference to an important case. This was the case of Deepika Singh versus Central Administrative Tribunal. The case is important because Deepika Singh was also an employee and she was working for the government, and again the state rule didn't allow for leave in case of two surviving children, and the leave was only available in case of less than two surviving children. In Deepika Singh's case, she did not have any of her own children, but her husband had two children from his past marriage, and which she had reflected in her official records. The court said that since she was having her first biological child, she could not be deprived of maternity leave. So the Supreme Court has referred to this particular case, which again interpreted the rule in a way to grant maternity leave to Deepika Singh. In our case, Uma Devi, repeating myself, from her first marriage had two children, after which she joined as an English teacher with the government. So during her tenure as a government servant, she did not take any maternity leave. In 2017, from the second marriage, she expects a third child, but the state does not grant her leave because she has two surviving children and therefore is restricted from maternity leave under FR 101A. Now, as I said, this particular case of Deepika Singh was referred to. The court also pointed out the role of Article 21, which under its umbrella also recognizes reproductive rights of women. Article 42 and 51 recognize that there has to be protections given in context of maternity to women, and that there must be compliance to international laws and treaties. The Supreme Court therefore referred to UDHR, the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights, and CEDAW, pointing out to provisions which again refer to the protection of women and mothers, especially in context of maternity leave, and how professions should not discriminate against women and provide protection in case of pregnancy. Therefore, the Supreme Court in this particular case also gave the decision that Uma Devi will continue to have the right to maternity leave and therefore was granted maternity leave in the matter. The Supreme Court importantly mentioned that maternity benefit comes under the ambit of reproductive rights, and maternity benefit in itself includes maternity leave. Now, another important aspect to remember in this case is, was the Maternity Benefit Act referred to? The answer is yes. The case did refer to Maternity Benefit Act. The Supreme Court did interpret the Maternity Benefit Act. It came to the conclusion that even this, our main central act, the Maternity Benefit Act, mentions that a female is entitled to have any number of children. But yes, there is a difference that in case of two surviving children, then the duration of maternity leave has changed, but in no way stops a female or does not deprive a woman of maternity leave. The duration does change. So the Supreme Court stated that an interpretation of the act also shows us that no female is disentitled from leave, and there is no such restriction which is created that restricts a female from having more than two children. Another important angle that the Supreme Court spoke about was when it comes to population control policies and vis-a-vis the right to maternity leave, they are not mutually exclusive. The court said that both have to be interpreted in a way that they must harmoniously come together, and therefore the idea that maternity leave will be something that an employee will be deprived of was not accepted by the Supreme Court, and Uma Devi was granted maternity leave under the particular case. I hope students you have understood this particular case law. Summarizing again, Uma Devi was having her third child. However, it was her first child from her second marriage. The fundamental rule which was applied to employees of the state government restricted maternity leave only when there were less than two surviving children. The Supreme Court disregarded this aspect of the rule and continued to give maternity leave to Uma Devi even for her third child. They referred to the Deepika Singh case, where again she was entitled to have the child, stating that it was her first biological child. Lastly, the court recognized that maternity benefit was a part of reproductive rights and maternity leave was a part of maternity benefit. Thank you, students. I hope you have a good day.